Every river running right now is sorting gemstones and gold by weight, 24 hours a day, without stopping. In 1895, Jake Hoover panned for gold in Yogo Gulch, Montana, and pulled out blue sapphires instead. 18.2 million carats came out of that single drainage over the next century. 5 specific formations created that deposit, and they exist in every river system on this planet. So why does every prospector walk past 4 of them? Specific gravity is the answer. It measures how heavy a mineral is compared to water. Gold sits at 19.3, sapphire at 4.0, garnet at 3.5. Common quartz sand, the stuff you kick through on every creek bank, sits at 2.65. The river does not care what a stone looks like. It only responds to weight. At every velocity change, every bend, every obstruction, the current drops its heaviest cargo first. I have measured specific gravity to the 3rd decimal place on rough sapphire parcels that crossed 4 borders before reaching a cutting house. The river performs that same calculation for free, constantly, using nothing but the physics of moving water flowing over an uneven bed. The first formation is the inside bend. Centrifugal force pushes the fastest water toward the outside bank, carving it deeper with every flood. On the inside curve, flow speed drops sharply. When velocity decreases, the heaviest particles fall first and bury themselves beneath lighter sand. Gold settles. Sapphire settles. Garnet settles. Quartz keeps moving downstream. In 1858, prospectors at Eldorado Bar on the Fraser River in British Columbia pulled 1 to 3 ounces of placer gold per day from inside bend deposits using hand sluice boxes and flat pans. That is roughly 60 to 90 grams per session, at today's market value of over $75 per gram. By 1926, the total recovery from that single stretch exceeded 2,186 ounces. Same predictable geometry, same physics, decade after decade. But the pay streak is not always exposed. After a major spring flood, fresh silt buries everything under inches of new material. The locals who know the seasonal timing reach the exposed layer in the narrow window before it vanishes. That timing gap is often just 2 or 3 weeks. Miss it, and you are panning through barren overburden until the next drawdown. This decision to wait for the right water level seemed small at the time. It was not. The difference between a full pan and an empty one often comes down to reading the river's calendar, not just its geometry. The second formation is the bedrock riffle. When water hits a hard rock shelf crossing the streambed, turbulence scours away lighter material and traps dense particles in cracks, potholes, and narrow crevices. Turbulent eddies create zones of near zero velocity inside those irregularities. Once a heavy mineral drops into a pocket, it cannot escape. These are nature's sluice boxes, running without maintenance for thousands of years. Hoover found his sapphires in exactly this kind of trap. The Gemological Institute of America confirmed that Yogo Gulch produced 18.2 million carats of rough sapphire between 1895 and 1994. Fine Yogo sapphires sell today for $500 to $2,000 per carat. The largest crystal, pulled from a riffle crevice in 1910, weighed 19 carats rough. I have held a Yogo sapphire against a loop, and the cornflower blue is unmistakable, unlike anything else on this continent. But the best bedrock riffles are buried under feet of loose overburden. You need a classifier to screen your material, a crevicing tool to scrape the pockets clean, and the patience to strip gravel layer by layer until you reach the resistant shelf where everything accumulates. Now, Hoover could have stopped there. He did not. He kept working upstream and found the riffles repeated at every resistant ledge crossing the drainage. That pattern holds everywhere on this planet. Wherever hard rock crosses a stream bed at an angle, you have a natural trap that has been filling for centuries, The geometry is predictable. The payoff is not guaranteed, but the physics never lies. The third formation is the plunge pool below a waterfall. Vertical falling water drives dense material deep into the pool's substrate with brutal force. The downward velocity component increases effective settling force for heavy particles, hammering them into the gravel floor like nails into soft wood. Gold at 19.3 specific gravity gets pushed deeper than any horizontal current could manage. Lighter quartz at 2.65 washes downstream and disappears. The pool keeps the heavy material and buries it beneath boulders that look completely barren from above. Clear water, smooth rock, nothing visible to the eye. But reaching the bottom requires low water conditions or serious commitment. The window is narrow, sometimes days, not weeks, before the river rises and seals everything under fresh current. I have stood at the base of a falls in the Rockies with spray soaking through my jacket, watching the water level drop inch by inch in late August, knowing the exposed margins would only last until the first autumn rain. Operators scanning those margins with pulse induction detectors during drawdowns pick up signals through 2 feet of compacted gravel that surface scanning would never reach. If you want exact coordinates, field guides, and the tools I use in the dirt, subscribe now. And somehow, the next formation gets even less attention than plunge pools. Most creek walkers step right over it without a second thought. The fourth formation is organic debris. Root wads, log jams, and downed trees create the same pressure shadow effect as a bedrock ledge. Water velocity drops behind the obstruction, shear stress decreases, and gravity dominates. Heavy particles accumulate in a concentrated pocket on the downstream side of the wood. I have pulled black sand and fine gold from behind a single downed cedar that sat in one creek for 3 seasons. The critical advantage here is that these traps refill themselves after every high water event. Year after year, the same log collects fresh material deposited by the current. You do not need to dig deep. You need to dig in the right shadow. The field test is the probe rod, a length of rebar, 3/8 of an inch thick from any hardware store, about $15, pushed vertically into the gravel until you feel resistance shift from loose rock to something firm. That firmness means you have hit a false bedrock layer or compacted clay, and that is exactly where heavy minerals stop falling. Mark the depth with your thumb on the rebar. If it is less than 2 feet, you can reach pay dirt with a shovel and a classifier in under an hour. The black sand scan confirms you are in the right spot before you ever break ground. Crouch low and look for streaks of magnetite and ilmenite, the dark purple-black iron minerals that always travel with gold and dense gem material, concentrated in thin lines along the downstream edge of the obstruction. By the time you understand the fifth formation, the other 4 start making more sense together. Clay, false bedrock layers. Impermeable clay. Fills every pore space completely, creating a seal tighter than concrete. Heavy minerals pile up on top of that barrier at whatever depth it sits, often 18 inches below the gravel surface, sometimes 3 feet, sometimes 6 meters. Completely invisible until you probe or dig. In Queensland, Australia, the sapphire fields around Rubyvale are built on this exact principle. Commercial operations strip overburden down to the clay horizon and recover gem-quality sapphire that has been accumulating above that seal since the late 1800s. Hundreds of millions of carats have come out of the central Queensland gem fields since the 1870s. And commercial mining is still active today. A fossicking license is mandatory in Queensland, hand tools only, and you cannot touch active mining leases. But the principle is universal. Every continent, every river system. The water sorted material by density. The clay caught it like a net. And nobody walking on the surface above has any way of knowing without putting a probe rod into the ground. The specific gravity water test is the final confirmation when you pull a suspect pebble from any of these 5 formations. Fill a container with creek water, set it on a $15 kitchen scale, and zero the reading. Weigh the stone dry on a separate surface, then suspend it in the water using a thin wire cradle without letting it touch the bottom. Record the submerged weight. Divide dry weight by the difference between dry and submerged. Sapphire reads 4.0. Garnet reads 3.5. Gold reads 19.3. Quartz reads 2.65. That single number tells you more than color, luster, or crystal shape ever could. I have watched experienced collectors spend hours debating whether a greasy gray pebble is corundum or feldspar. The water test answers it in 4 minutes. No debate, no guesswork. Just density. The question was never whether the treasure is there. Every river on this planet is sorting its bed by weight right now, dropping the densest minerals into 5 predictable formations, patiently, relentlessly, without stopping. The physics runs day and night, whether anyone is watching or not. The question is whether you know which formation to stand over when you push that probe rod into the gravel and feel the resistance change beneath your feet.